Hello friends, thank you for watching this video. I am Mohamad and I will be showing you today how to add, edit, delete and navigate within our Blazor application. Some of the topics that we will cover are new endpoint functionalities, navigation manager and two-way binding. Please like and subscribe if you like this video. This is part 2 of our Blazor app journey. We will be basing our current work on our previous WASM application that we have created on our last video and our todoAPI. Links to the video will be in the description and in the upper right hand side corner. You can follow along either by watching the video and building the application with me, or you can get the latest source code from GitHub. Links are also in the description down below. First, if we wanna navigate to GitHub, we can get it directly from here. So this is my GitHub account and we can base our application on v9 Blazor WASM app with Rest. Let's check this out locally on our machine. Git clone. Perfect. Now we have the application locally on our machine. Let's open it up using Visual Studio Code. Perfect. Now we can see we have the application on our machine right now. So let's open first terminal. Perfect. Yes, restore. And let's build our application to make sure all of the required restoration, all of the packages have already been restored successfully. So we type .NET build and we wait a few seconds. Perfect, build succeeded. So now that we have completed the first part of retrieving the data from the API, the next step for us is to be able to add, edit and delete data. So let's verify that first of all our API is running. So in order for us to get that API, let's go back to GitHub and the API will be v8 refresh token with JWT. These links as well, it will be available in the description down below. So I have already checked out this project and I think I've already have it running. Let me double check. Perfect. As we can see here, I have the application running on port 8090 and everything is working. Let us test it with Postman. And let's do a small request to get all of the to-do apps that we have. Perfect. We can see that we get all of the results, which is great. So now that we have made sure that our API is running, now let's run our previous application and see what stage we were in. So let's type .NET run. So now let's open our web browser and see the application running. As you can see here, I have navigated to localhost 5000 and we have the application running. If I go to item overview, we can see all of the to-do item has been listed here. And if I click on details, we can see the detail of every item, which is great. So this is the expected behavior and this is where we stopped last time in our previous video. So the next step is adding the ability to add, edit and delete items from our list. Luckily, we have already implemented all of this functionality from the API side. All we need to do right now is just add this functionality to Blazor. So in order for us to do that, we need to utilize some of the Blazor's stuff that is provided for us. So Blazor comes with a support of data binding, which make it easier for us to retrieve and set values. There is three types of binding. We have one-way binding, two-way binding, and component parameters. If we go, for example, to item details, we can see an example of a one-way binding where we are actually getting the information from our class and we are displaying it here because we're only showing it, we are not changing it, we're not manipulating it. It's called one-way binding. So for two-way binding, which is a bidirectional flow, and component parameter, we're going to be covering it within our application right now. So what are we going to do now? The first thing that we're going to do is we need to add a new item edit.razor basically we're gonna add a new component, and this component is gonna be called item edit. And this component is going to be formed of two files. The first one is going to be a Razor file for the UI, and another one which is going to be a class, a partially class for the code. So let's start with that. Within our pages folder, let's create a new class. We'll call this class item edit. Perfect, and it has to be partial. Let's save. Now we'll create a new file, and we'll call this file item edit.razor. Perfect. So these are the two files that we need. Now let's update our item edit.cs file. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna inject our to-do data service that we have created it before. For a reminder, we have created these two files here, our interface for our i2do data service and our implementation, which is the to-do data service. And we have automatically injected it within our program.cs, so it will be running for us whenever the application runs. And this line here, it will handle all of the dependency injection, and our UI container is gonna be ready, the I container is gonna be ready for us to utilize it. So let us first, within our item.edit.cs, let's add this. So we start by inject public i2do data service. We'll call it to-do data service, and we'll specify the get and the set. Now let's fix the references. And here, perfect. So the next step, we're gonna define the parameter. So as have we discussed earlier, in order for us to navigate from one page to another, we need like and we want to get a certain information, we need like a parameter. In web technology, we use a query string. In Blazor, it's called a parameter. So we need basically to implement some kind of a query string here, similar to what we did within the item details. Here we have created a parameter called ID. We're gonna do the same thing within the item edit. So we'll define a parameter, and this parameter gonna be public of type string. So public string, and we're gonna call it ID. Perfect. So the next step is we need to define an object where all of this where the item data information is gonna be stored. So it's gonna be as simple as well. Gonna be public item data. We're gonna call it item. We'll specify the getters and the setters. Perfect. And we'll initialize it. Great. Now let's fix the references. And finally, what we need to do right now, for the time being, we're gonna create the uninitialized async in order for us to fill that service. So protected async override task uninitialized async. We're gonna convert our parameter to an int, so we'll call it item ID equal convert dot to int32, and we're gonna pass the ID as well. Let's fix the references and for the task as well. And now item equal await, we'll use the to-do data service that we have dot get item details, and we'll pass it the item ID, which is an int. Perfect. So right now what we did is we basically implemented the same thing that we have implemented with the item detail, almost same logic. We just got we are getting the information from the API, which is exactly what we need for the time being. The next step is we need to start working on our UI, which is gonna be the Razor file. So usually when we have a web application and we wanna pass, for example, we have a list of stuff. For example, let's say we have a list of items and we're gonna check an item detail. When we click on an item, within that link itself, we're gonna have a query string, which is gonna be, for example, containing the ID of the item that we want to see, and this will allow us to grab the information for that specific item. But within Blazor, we'd have the similar concept, which is called parameters, which we have discussed before, but we don't have the option of a optional parameter, because if that parameter is null, we cannot really define it. So in order for us to mitigate that risk or mitigate that functionality, what we need to do is we need to add page. We need to add two page declarative. So one with a parameter, one without it. So the first one is going to be item edit, and the second one is going to be page / item edit, and we're going to pass it the ID. So why do we have to? Since we're going to be utilizing this page for edit, delete, and add, so basically this page is going to be serving three purposes. For the edit, we're going to need an ID, but for the add, we're not going to need an ID, because the ID is going to be generated for us once we create it, and the database is going to be responsible for auto-generating that ID for us. So for this reason, we have these two here, one with an ID and one without an ID. The next step is going to be creating simply a simple form. So first, let's do a div class row, and let's do an h1. We'll call it details for @item dot title, so we can see the titles. And let's create a form. So if we have a web, or we can use it here, actually we'll have a form like this, and we'll specify, for example, the method equal post, etc., etc., etc. Similarly, we can Blazor has its own form, and that form is called edit form. So edit form is a very powerful tool because it provides us with a lot of built-in functionality that's gonna do a lot of the heavy lifting for us. So let's do edit form, and we'll specify the model that this form is gonna represent, which is gonna be the item. Perfect. Now let's just define the three fields that we want. So div, and this div is gonna be class form group, and within this div we're gonna have a label. We're gonna call it title, and let's give it class call -md-3, for example. And similarly, when it comes to the web technology, we'll have an input field, and this input field will have a name and an ID. Within Blazor, we can also use the input field, but also Blazor provides us with a customized input. It's called input text, which also provides us with some built-in functionality. So let's give it this a class called -md-8, and this is one of the most important thing that we're going to be adding, which is the add bind value, and we're going to bind it to the title. Let's give it an ID, title, and let's close it. So what does this mean? What does bind-value mean? The bind-value mean is it allows us two-way binding. What is two-way binding? Let's first go to the item details, and so we can see here we have @item.title. So this is, we're just getting the information from the model and we're just displaying it without doing anything with it. And this is a one-way binding because we're only showing the information. If we want to be able to send back the information to our class, the way to do it from an input text is to use add bind value. This keyword here, it allows this item to have a two-way connection. So Once we update it here, it will be automatically reflected in the backend, even if we don't click on save, or even if we don't click on submit button, the object will automatically go into memory within the class. So this is called a two-way binding, and this is why we need it here. So the second one we're gonna need is, let's create another div. Tell you what, let's copy this, it's easier and faster. And this one here is gonna be for the description. But instead of using an input text, we're gonna use an input text area. And let's fix here. And instead of a title, it's gonna be a description. Perfect. And the last item that we want is gonna be the done, which is gonna be a checkbox. So also let's copy this. And instead of title, we're gonna make it done, and it's gonna be input checkbox, and the value is gonna be done. And let's copy this, paste it here, and here I have to put description, I apologize, and here it has to be done. Okay, so we have call dash, perfect, everything is running. Let's build it to make sure that everything is still building as it should. So .NET build. Perfect, let's run it, .NET run, just to make sure that everything is the way it should be. Perfect, now let's check it within our web browser. We always have to refresh. Okay, the application is still running. If we click on details, we can see it. If I change it from the URL to item edit, we can see that we have a text box, a description, and we have a checkbox we can type, which is perfect. This is the implementation that we were waiting for. Perfect. So now we are make sure that everything is running and everything is building. Let's update our view so we can directly go here. So what do I mean by that? If we go to the item overview .razor, within the table itself, let's add a new href. And this href is gonna take us to the edit page. So we'll add $. It's gonna call item edit, and we're gonna give it an item ID. Perfect. And let's give it a class btn dash warning, because it's gonna be edit, and we're gonna call it edit. Again, let's try to build and run and see what's happened. Perfect, application is building. Let's go back to the browser and click on item overview, and let's refresh. And perfect, we can see the edit, and if we click on it, it will give us the information. Perfect, this is the expected behavior that we have. Let's do one more thing within our view. So because it was all cramped up together, let's put a BR here, and let's put this within its own row. So div class call dash md dash 12, and let's put the h1 inside of it. Now let's see how it looks. .NET run, and if we refresh, perfect. Now at least let's fix the description. It's the last thing that we want to fix. So let's stop the application, and for the description, let's add, for example, let's add here, I think it was call dash md dash offset dash 2 dash 1. So we're offsetting it by 1. and let's refresh. Still the same. Let's see, inspect. Is it call.c bootstrap call dash md dash offset? Let's see. It should be here somewhere. Offsetting. Okay, so it's not offset. Oh yeah, so it's gonna be offset dash md dash 1. Yeah, offset dash md dash 1. Okay, now let's stop it and try it again. Let's refresh. Perfect, that's what we wanted. Great. So the next step is gonna be we're gonna add more functionality to our item edit.cs. So let's stop the application. And the first thing that we're gonna add is a state message. So a state message is and a boolean. So these two they're gonna be called state management, and they're gonna allow us to see what's the status of our application when we do any action against it. So the first thing that we're gonna add, let's give it a comment saying these are the state management. The first thing is gonna be protected string message. So in case we save, if we click on edit item and it's successful, that item has been added successfully, that message is gonna be saved within this variable here. And if it's saved successfully, we're gonna use the bool that we're gonna define later on as well to save that value. So protected as well, bool saved. So this is the first thing that we're gonna add in case we wanna broadcast messages between here and the view. Secondly, we wanna add some logic to our uninitialized async in order for us to separate if the request which is coming is adding a new item or editing a new item. So how do we do that? First of all, let's set the saved state to false, because by default it should be false, and after every action it should either stay false if it's failed or switch to true if it succeeded. And secondly, we're gonna be utilizing the ID. So just let us string dot is null or empty, and we're gonna pass the ID. Okay, and in case it's not, we're gonna get the information. So what did we do here? Just to summarize. So as we mentioned before, we have a parameter called ID, and this parameter here is gonna be coming to us from the details page. So as we know, we have a details page, and once we click on edit, it's gonna take us to see the information that related to that item itself. So we're using the ID as a parameter to know which item we were gonna display. In case this ID is empty, we know that we're not gonna be pulling any information, we're gonna be creating data. So this is why here we did this condition. In case the ID is empty, we don't need to pull any data from the server. The second thing, we're gonna add two functions. The first function that we're gonna add is once we add the submit button to our item edit.razor, it's gonna be handling that function. So basically, when I click on save, the functionality that it's attached to save is gonna be linked to this functionality, to this method that I'm gonna be creating right now. And if it fails, we're gonna attach it to another method that we're also gonna be creating. So first, let's attach it to the method that will occur once that save is clicked. So first of all, it's gonna be protected async task. We're gonna be calling it handle valid request. And basically, we're gonna do the same checking to see if it's gonna be adding a new data or updating a new data. So if string does is null or empty. So if it's null or empty, it means that we need to add it. we need to add the item. So in order for us to do that, we're gonna declare a variable, check the results. We're gonna be using the todoData service dot add item. We haven't really added those functions yet. We'll add them after this. It's gonna take an item, and if res is successful or not null, we update to true. Message is gonna be item has been added, and in case it wasn't, we return a message something went wrong. Now the other option is that we want to update, so else we are updating the item. We'll call the await todoData service dot update item. Again, this function doesn't exist. We're gonna add it now, and we're gonna change the saved equal true, and we're gonna return the message item has been updated. Perfect. Let's add the fail request, and then we'll add those two functions, the add item and the update function. So protected void handle invalid requests, and we're just gonna return a message. We're gonna say failed to submit form. As simple as that. So let us now add those let us add these functions right now, or let us add some validation first. Okay, let us add validation, then we'll add those functions. So let's go to our models, because we want to display demonstrate how Blazor give us built-in validation. Let's add new attributes, so we'll just make it required. Simple as that. We'll make this also required. Okay, now let's add those services. So the first thing we need to add within our interface, we need to add three methods actually. So the first one is going to be task, item data, add item. It's going to take an item data, we'll call it item. The second one is going to be task. It's not going to return anything, it's just going to be updating the data, updating item. And it's going to take an item data, call it item. And lastly, it's going to be the delete. It's going to also a task, and it's going to take a simple ID. Now let's implement these here. Implement, perfect. So first of all, we're going to implement the add item. We don't need this, let's delete it. So first we're going to take this item here, and we're going to be converting it to a string content, which is basically going to be a content type, so we can send it to the API. So we'll call it var item JSON new string content. We're gonna pass it the JSON serializer dot serialize, and we're gonna pass the item, and then we're gonna be giving it the encoding, which is gonna be the UTF-8. So encoding dot UTF-8, and lastly we're gonna say what type of media type. So it's gonna be application /JSON. Okay, great. Let's fix the references here. Okay, perfect. So the next step is we're gonna be calling the HTTP client for us to do the request. So it's gonna be var, the HTTP client is gonna return a response. It's gonna be await HTTP client, which is already defined here, and we have mentioned it before in our previous video that is automatically injected for us from the program.cs class. We're gonna do a simple post, and we're gonna be directing to the API /todo. This is the domain, the path in our API, and we're gonna be sending the item JSON. As simple as that. And now what we need to do as well, first we need to make this async. So this will be happy, perfect. We need to check the response. So if response.is successful state code, so it means that we got a 200. We're gonna be deserializing that response and sending it back. So var response body equal await response.content.read as stream async, perfect. And then gonna be returning await JSON serializer dot deserialize async. We're gonna deserialize it on item data, and we're gonna pass it the response body, and we're gonna tell it that's gonna be of new JSON serializer options, and the property name incans, okay, perfect, equal to true, C equal true, and let's put a semicolon at the end, perfect. So what happened in case this doesn't work? We need to return null because it failed. We're not gonna be returning any object. So let's summarize here. So we got the object, which is gonna be of type item data. We serialize it here, and then we converted it into string content because the post async is gonna require a HTTP content. So string content is is inherited from HTTP content, so it will fit here. And then we have API data. We have this path from the other API. So let me just show you. So this is our API application, and if we go to our to-do controller, we can see that the route is API and to-do, and to add a new item, we're doing a post. So we're just mapping to what we did in our previous API. Again, the links to these will be available in the description down below. So after we added the item data, the next step is gonna be doing the delete, which is gonna be also very, very simple. Basically, we're just gonna let's delete this. We're gonna make this function async. We're gonna go await underscore HTTP client dot delete async because we have already implemented this. And this, we're gonna specify the path. So we'll put the $sign. Okay, great. It's gonna go to API /todo / the ID that we want to delete. As simple as that. So this is our delete function. And lastly, we're gonna be adding implementing our update item. So the first thing, we need to make it async. Let's delete this. And it's always, I didn't do this here, but I just remembered it. It's always better to do anything that's related to API in a try catch. So let's implement this, and we'll re-implement the try catch later on. So let's put try, because everything related to API, it might fail. It could be the connection has disconnected from the application, for example, or the server is having any problems, or the application is shut down. Multiple reasons. So it's always better to have a try catch. So try catch see exception. Let's make it right for now, a generic exception. Let's fix this reference. It's gonna be using system, perfect. All we're gonna do is we're just gonna for now we're gonna just put out the or type out the error. So write line ex.message. That's it for now. Now within the try itself, let's first convert this object to a JSON. So let's take it exactly from here. Let's take this No need to repeat the work, just copy it. Perfect. Now, after we did this, perfect, let's define the URL that we're gonna be sending. So var URL equal, it's also gonna be dynamic text, so put API / todo / the ID, because our API, it's gonna be item.id, because our API is gonna be expecting it. So let us just double check. So if we go back to the API, and we can see our put functionality, it asks for an ID as well as an object, so we need to provide both. Perfect. So the next step is gonna be var response equal await underscore HTTP client dot put async, because we are updating, and we're gonna be passing it the URL as well as the item JSON. Great. Now let's check the response. If response dot is successful code, all we need to do is we're not gonna return anything, but let us just do console dot write line. We're just gonna be displaying success just for testing, nothing more. Okay, great. So now we have our update. Let's add the try catch to the delete. So try catch exception ex and console dot write line and x dot message, and we'll just take this and we need to put it here. Again, everything related to API connection, it's always better to have it in try catch. In case something goes wrong, we'll have a graceful error instead of just showing the user a big error on the screen. And lastly, we need to do it here as well. So again, let's put a try catch. Try catch exception ex console.writeLine ex.message. Perfect. And now just copy all of these and put them inside. Oh, we need to return a null. That's a good point. So here, let's add this here. Let's fix this. Perfect. And now let's return null. Null. Okay, great. Great. So this is cover everything related to the API. Now let's continue working on our item edit. The first thing that we're gonna do here within our item edit is we need to update this line here. What do we need to do? As we mentioned, that once we click on submit, there's gonna be two functions that are gonna be handling the success and the failure. So we need to specify them here. So what do? We say onValid submit. We're gonna be calling, what was the name of the function that we added? Handle valid request. Just copy this. I will put that handle valid request. Perfect. And on failure, so on invalid submit, let's take the second function that we created, handle invalid request, and we'll just put it here. Perfect. So the second thing that we're gonna do is we have already added within our item data the validation, which is we said required. These two needs to be required. So how do we display them in the within our interface, our Razor pages, Razor component? What we need to do is we need to add, let's make them here before the BR. So we'll add, similar to the ASP.NET data annotation validator, and we're gonna add the validation summary. Validation summary. Perfect. Okay, these two, let's do this way. Okay, great. Now let's add the submit button. So before the edit form is closed, let's add it. So we'll make it in a div class form group as well, and we'll just create a new button of type submit. Okay, type equals submit, and let's give it a class of btn dash warning, and we'll call save item. Okay, perfect. And let's show the label that we had before. So we'll put label at message. So the message here, in case it is successful or it fails, we can see the message here. Message. Perfect. That's what else do we need to add? Let's update our item overview.razor so we can add a new button to add new items. So before all of this, let's put a br and okay, let's add a new div class. We'll give it a row. We're basically using bootstrap classes here. Div class call -md-12. Okay, great. We're just gonna add a simple href, and we're gonna redirect it to item edit. And since it's gonna be adding, we don't really need to pass a parameter. We'll give it a class btn dash success, and we'll call it create item. Sweet. Okay, great. So what else do we want to add? Let's add within our item detail a return button in case the user decided to cancel our item edit, a return button in case the user decided to cancel their action. So here we're gonna put a new href on click equal, we don't have this function yet, but we'll create it. We'll call it go to index, or go to overview, go to overview, and we'll give this one btn, we'll give it a class btn dash primary. Okay, great, and we'll call it back. So now let's define this function. Let's go to item edit. So it's gonna be protected void. Okay, so here, that's a very good point. We're gonna be using right now a navigation manager. So a navigation manager, I'm not sure if you have used WPF before. In WPF we have something called the navigation state, which allow us to move from one form to another. Similarly here, we have something called the navigation manager, which will allow us to navigate from one component to another. It's not like it's similar to a query string, but it's built into our Razor components from the inside. So the request will not leave the state that we are in. So within this component, within the component that we are in, it will check with the navigation manager, and then it initiate a move from one component to another. So how do we use it? How do you use the navigation manager? So in order for us to implement it, we can go to the on top, we can inject it in, because this is a functionality provided us by Blazor. It's automatically part of our DI container. So if we want to use it, all we need is just to declare it within the component that we wanted. So in our case right now, we have added the inject because we want to inject it in this component, and we need to define it. So we'll do public navigation manager, we'll call it navigation manager, and we specify the getters and the setters, and that's it. And now from within the go to overview, it's gonna be as simply as just calling it. So navigation manager dot navigate to, it's very similar to the WPF, and we'll call it item overview, because basically we're going to be returning to the item overview.razor, to the view component. Let us try this before we do anything else and see if everything works. So First, let's build the application. So it's going to be .NET build. Great, it's building. Now let's run it. .NET run. Perfect. Let's go to our web browser. Let's go to home page and let's refresh. Okay, great. Let's go to item overview. Perfect. We can see that we already have the green button here to add, to create new items, and we have the details and the edit. So let's start first by creating a new item, and let's call this item. First, let's try the back button. Perfect, it works. So the navigation back, it works. Let's create a new item. We'll call this item have lunch. Description. As we can see directly, because it's a two-way binding, we didn't have to click on anything. As soon as we left the text box, it has automatically been populated here. If you remember, within the item edit, we have added the title here. So as soon as this object has been filled in memory, it automatically populated everywhere. So this is a two-way binding. Description, we're gonna be have a nice burger, and let's save the item. And it tells us that we have an error. So since we are using Chrome, let's inspect and see what is this error. So we can see that within our network, let's click on save again, and it's saying that we have it. Oh, it says item has been added. Maybe this one is invalid. Let's see. Yeah, have lunch. We have added it twice. Okay, so it's working. I apologize. Let's add another one just to make, so it's on load is causing issue. Okay. Why is it causing issue on load? Let's check. Let's go back and let's clear this and check the console and go to create item. Okay, the issue is because these are already empty and it's expecting them to be full because they are required, which is completely understandable. We can add more conditions later on in order for us to avoid this issue. So the next step is we want to edit it. So let's edit the other one, the last one, and instead of have lunch, we'll make it have dinner, and instead of a burger, we'll have a pizza. And now let's save it, and it tells us item has been updated. So if we go back, we can see we have lunch and have dinner. Perfect. So now we have the back functionality working, adding a new item is working, and we have the editing, updating an item is working. The last item, the last thing that we're still missing is the delete functionality. So how do we handle that? The best way to add a delete functionality, we can add a new button here, which is called delete, but there's a better implementation if we add it directly from within the edit page. So let's say, for example, if we go to the edit page and let's say I wanna delete this one, 3 tests. Because I'm editing, I don't wanna show I wanna show a button here called delete. So because I wanna remove it. So how do I do that? Let's go back to our code, and within our item edit.razor, let us add a new condition. So we need to make sure that we're not adding, so we need to make sure that we have our ID. So let's add an if, same condition, so string dot is null or empty, and we're checking the ID. So what does this mean? So this means that only when this condition fails, we're gonna be executing the code within these brackets. So this is like a false, actually not. So in case this one is true, it will not work. So only if this sentence mean this. Basically, sorry, this. So instead of having this long line, what we can do is we can just put this. So it's the opposite of the condition. let's add a simple link with a on-click functionality so we can delete. So add on-click, what did we call the function? I think we called it delete. Oh, we didn't create it yet. Okay, let's create it after that. So we'll call it delete item. Delete item. And let's give it a class CRUD, class btn danger, because we're deleting, and we'll call it delete item. Okay, and now let's create this one. So I forgot the add here. Okay, let's go back to our item edit with protected void delete item. So the first thing we need to do, similar to before, we need to check that the ID is not null. So if string dot is null or empty, we have to pass the ID. So in case this condition fails, we will delete it. So how do we do that? We need to convert that ID to an int. So var item ID equal convert dot to int32 ID, and we're just gonna call the todoData service dot delete, and we'll pass the ID. Simple as that. Let's make this one async, and it's gonna return a task. And once this is deleted, we want to navigate back to our root directory. So we're gonna use the navigation manager that we have defined before. Navigate to, gonna go to item overview, and in case this condition fails, let's return back a message, something went wrong. Message, we'll put something went wrong, unable to delete. Okay, great. Let's stop the application and let's build it again. .NET build. Perfect. Now let's go back to our browser. Let's refresh this. Oh, it's not working. Oh, we didn't run it. Okay. Apologies. .NET run. Let's go back to the browser. Let's refresh. It's loading. Let's go back. Let's go here. Still not working. I wonder why. Oh, we didn't save it. Apologize for that. Save. Now let's run it again. Now let's go back to the browser. Let's refresh. Oh, let's fix the button first. First of all, I put it outside the form, so let's put it here. That way everything will be next to each other. Let's do it one more time. Okay, perfect. Let's refresh. Perfect. We have now delete item. Let's go back and create an item. We didn't see it. That's right. Now let's go back and click on edit. For example, this one, and let's click on delete, and we can see it has been deleted successfully. Perfect. So to summarize, within this video, what we did is we took our previous application, which had get all and get details, and we have added functionality, which is add, edit, delete, as well as we utilize the navigation framework, as well as we discussed how to do data bindings. So please like, share, and subscribe and comment if you like this video. Thank you very much for watching. All of the source code will be available in the description down below.